Beloved brothers and sisters, peace be with you. On this channel, JesuNova Truth, we gather not for idle curiosity but for encounter with the living mystery of Christ. Today I ask you for a sacred few minutes of attention. Imagine, for a moment, the sky opening above your life. Imagine that what you have struggled with, what you have prayed over, what has seemed final and immovable, is suddenly placed within reach of a new horizon. That image is not a poetic fantasy. It is the reality the Church proclaims in the Ascension of Jesus. If you stay with me until the end, I promise this ancient event will become a present power in your heart and a practical compass for your daily life. The Ascension is often told as a scene Jesus rising, disciples watching, clouds concealing him, yet the scene points to theological realities that shape every Christian vocation. Far from being a retreat or departure, the Ascension inaugurates Christ's sovereign presence and extends his mission through time. He returns to the Father not to abandon the world but to exalt human nature, to reign as Lord, to intercede as priest, and to send the Spirit as power. The story is cosmic and personal at once. It tells us where history is going and how your smallest choices fit into God's great design. Let me make this concrete with a memory from my years of pastoral care. A man named Marco came to me, hollowed by loss and confusion. He had recently lost his job. His marriage was strained, and his teenage son barely spoke to him. In the silence of his pain he confessed, "Father, if God reigns, why does my life feel like rubble?" I did not answer with doctrine alone. I told him a story. When carpenters raise a beam high above a house, the work below often looks messy: scaffolding, dust, noise. The raising of the beam is the sign that the house will stand. The Ascension is like that beam being lifted. From one angle it looks like absence. From another it secures the whole structure. Marco slowly began to see his struggles as part of a larger raising. He began to pray not simply for immediate repair but for perspective, that he might see the beam being lifted and cooperate with the work of God. Months later, the job came through, and reconciliation began in measures small and real. The point was not a miracle shortcut, it was the reshaping of hope. Consider another encounter I had with a young nurse named Lydia, who worked long nights in a hospital ward. She wrestled with fatigue and the sense that her daily acts of compassion were unnoticed and insignificant. One quiet evening after a shift she whispered, "I feel so small. How can anything I do matter to God who is in heaven?" I asked her to reflect on the Ascension as a mode of presence, because Christ ascended. He is not confined to a single place. He fills every room where love is practiced. Your small acts, I told her, are the very ways heaven touches earth. Lydia began to carry that conviction into her rounds. She stayed a little longer with patients who were afraid, and she found that her small kindnesses multiplied into healing beyond immediate measure. The Ascension turned her exhaustion into a channel of divine presence. These stories reveal two indispensable dynamics of the Ascension. First, the Ascension confirms Christ's kingship and intercession. He reigns above disorder and advocates for us before the Father. Second, the Ascension empowers mission. Jesus does not return to inactivity, he returns to send. The disciples were not left with nostalgia, they were sent with purpose. They returned from the mount not gazing at the sky but moved to proclaim, to baptize, to heal. The Ascension is less a conclusion than an activation. Theologically, the Ascension also bridges the local and the universal. When Jesus walked the roads of Galilee, his presence was particularly felt in one place at one time. After the Ascension he becomes the Lord whose presence is not localized. Through the Spirit his presence becomes universal, accessible in every language, culture, hospital bed, office, and quiet kitchen where faith is lived. That universality is not abstract, it is incarnational. Heaven's authority meets earth's flesh exactly where we are vulnerable. There is a practical application I want you to take into your week. Identify one mountain in your life: a recurring worry, an unresolved relationship, a dream deferred. Sit with that concern and reframe it in the light of the Ascension. Ask, if Jesus reigns and intercedes, how changes my approach? Am I waiting passively for rescue? Or am I cooperating with the mission he entrusted to me? Am I lifting my eyes and letting hope reconfigure my habits? Often the Ascension calls us away from despair and into disciplined hope. We work, we pray, we serve, and we trust that the King has already gone ahead. Now, a brief caution: the Ascension is no invitation to spiritual escapism. The fact that Jesus is in glory does not mean we ignore suffering. He ascended precisely to bring glory into suffering, to transfigure it. The wounds of Christ remain the very marks of his solidarity with us. Because he ascended with wounds. Our wounds are not barriers to glory, they are the places Christ enters to heal and redeem before we close. Let me offer a final story of a small parish that almost closed because of debt. The community gathered, discouraged, and decided to respond not by withdrawing but by serving more boldly, feeding the hungry, tutoring children, opening the church as a shelter in cold nights. Slowly, support came, not simply in donations but in renewed purpose. People who had once felt excluded found a home. The Ascension had been made flesh in that parish. What looked like a loss became a platform for the reign of love. Final lesson: the Ascension of Jesus is not a distant spectacle. It is a living reality that crowns Christ's victory and commissions his followers. It assures you that your life is not random, it is graced. It tells you that heaven has touched earth in a way that empowers you to lift others, to act with courage, to pray with confidence, and to live in hopeful expectation. Lift your eyes from the dust. Let your hands do the work of the kingdom. The King has ascended, and he invites you to build with him until the day when heaven and earth are fully one. Thank you for being part of JesuNova Truth. May the ascended Lord fill your heart with courage, your hands with compassion, and your days with mission.